culture. IShowSpeed closed his tour in the beautiful land of Namibia, and I thought about African proverbs and how also they played a very significant role in African history. A few: until the lion learns to write, every story will glorify the hunter. It's from West Africa, often associated with the Akan oral tradition in Ghana. A child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. This is from East Africa, commonly attributed to the Maasai oral tradition in Kenya, Tanzania. Wisdom is like a baobab tree. No one individual can embrace it. This is also from West Africa, Akan, Yoruba regions. Rain does not fall on one roof alone. It's from South Africa, the Zulu XHOSA Hosa oral tradition. He who learns teaches. It's from Ethiopia. The one who asks questions does not lose his way. It's also from East Africa. When the roots of a tree begin to decay, it spreads death to the branches. This is from West Africa, Nigeria. African proverbs. So important. African proverbs are not decorative sayings, they are compressed philosophy. In societies where knowledge was transmitted orally rather than through written text, proverbs functioned as memory tools, encoding ethics, survival strategies, leadership principles, and social boundaries into language that can be easily remembered and passed down across generations. African proverbs. So Namibia has a lot of rich history here. So it says here, Namibia's impact on African culture is quiet but foundational. Long before borders, empires, or European trade routes, the land that would become Namibia functioned as a crossroads between southern, central, and coastal Africa. Its arid climate forced innovation, mobility, oral memory, rock art, and ecological intelligence became cultural strengths rather than limitations. These adaptations influenced pastoral traditions, spiritual symbolism, and survival ethics that ripple across southern Africa today. Unlike many African regions, Namibia's geography limited large scale participation in the transatlantic slave trade. The Namib Desert created natural barriers, and there were no major slave ports comparable to West or East Africa. Instead, Namibia's historical value emerged later through minerals, diamonds, uranium, copper, and zinc, which profoundly shaped colonial interests and modern economic structures. This meant Namibia's trauma history centers more on land dispossession and genocide than on mass human exploitation. Namibia's name, history, and people reflect endurance rather than empire. The ancient peoples who lived there did not build monumental cities, but they built time resistant knowledge systems. When Germany colonized the region in the late 19th century, this resilience was violently tested during one of the first genocides of the 20th century. Modern Namibia carries this memory while also standing as one of Africa's most politically stable democracies, a nation shaped by survival, silence, and delayed recognition. What does Namibia mean? Namibia comes from the Namib Desert, one of the oldest deserts on planet Earth. Namib is derived from the, what is that, cocoa? I have some pronunciations here. Word for Namib, meaning vast place or place of nothingness. The name reflects geography first, identity second, land before nation. Ancient peoples of Namibia, San, among the oldest continuous cultures on planet Earth, known for rock art and oral cosmology. It's the koi koi. That's what it was. The koi koi is what I was trying to pronounce. Koi koi, pastoralist with complex social systems and language using click consonants. Ovambo, agricultural communities dominant in northern Namibia. Herero, Herero, cattle centered culture with strong spiritual ties to ancestry. Demara, possibly among the earliest settled groups, later marginalized. Namibia and the slave trade, participation or absence. Minimal direct involvement, and here's why. No major Atlantic slave ports. Harsh desert geography restricted large scale transport. Societies were decentralized, limiting capture networks. European interests focused later on minerals, not human trade. Economic impact. Because Namibia wasn't integrated into early slave economies, it was later absorbed into extractive colonial capitalism, meaning wealth left the land rather than circulating within it. This delayed infrastructure development but preserved population continuity. Some historical facts. Namibia contains some of the oldest rock art on Earth, over 25,000 years old. The Herero and Nama genocide, 1904 to 1908, is considered the first genocide of the 20th century. The Namib Desert is older than the Sahara, possibly 55 million years old. Namibia was a German colony, not British, which shaped its architecture and legal systems. Diamonds were discovered by accident by a railway worker in 1908. Namibia hosts one of the largest uranium reserves globally. They say by accident, but they knew there was diamonds there, all right? Namibia hosts one of the largest uranium reserves globally, the largest. The San people's DNA is among the oldest genetic lineages known to science. Apartheid laws were enforced in Namibia under South African rule until 1990. Wow. Namibia gained independence peacefully compared to many liberation struggles. The country has one of Africa's strongest wildlife conservation frameworks tied to indigenous land rights. Cultural contributions, rock art as historical record, click based languages influencing Southern African linguistics, pastoral governance models based on kinship, not hierarchy, environmental stewardship rooted in survival ethics, and oral cosmology influencing regional storytelling traditions. So let's talk a little bit more about Namibia's natural resources here. Uranium. Namibia is one of the world's top uranium producers, primarily through mines like the Rosine and Husab. Uranium from Namibia enters global supply chains as yellow cake, a concentrated form that is refined elsewhere and ultimately supports civilian nuclear energy and strategic stockpiles. While Namibia does not export directly to US consumers in obvious ways, its uranium feeds a system that underwrites American energy stability, defense readiness, and technological dominance. For the United States, uranium is less about electricity alone and more about systemic leverage. Nuclear power provides roughly one fifth of the United States' electricity, stabilizing grids during peak demand and reducing dependence on fossil fuels. Beyond energy, uranium anchors deterrence infrastructure. Without it, the architecture of modern geopolitics collapses. US national products and systems dependent on uranium. Well, you have the nuclear power plants, the electric grid stability, aircraft carriers and submarines, the nuclear propulsion, medical isotopes for cancer treatment, diagnostics, industrial radiography, infrastructure inspection, space exploration power systems, weapons deterrence systems, strategic stockpiles, research reactors, universities, labs, emergency power systems for critical facilities, weather and climate monitoring technologies, advanced material research. Namibia supplies the raw material, but the value multiplication, which is refinement, technology, patents, and defense contracts, happens elsewhere. Namibia's uranium wealth does not circulate domestically at a scale due to layered legal and economic controls, many inherited or adapted from colonial systems. One, foreign ownership of extraction companies. Two, export oriented licensing frameworks favoring raw material shipment. Three, limited domestic refining capacity by design. Four, investor protection treaties that restrict nationalization. Five, tax incentives for multinational mining firms. Six, global commodity pricing set externally. Seven, capital flight through offshore holding companies. Eight, debt dependency tied to development loans. Nine, environmental liability externalization. Cleanup costs remain local. And 10, trade agreements prioritizing stability over sovereignty. Namibia was colonized by Germany in 1884 and renamed German Southwest Africa. What followed was not accidental brutality, but systematic domination, land seizure, forced labor, and racial classification enforced by military rule. The Herero and I want to say Nama genocide 1904 to 1908 says here this was not a conflict, it was extermination. Factors that led to the genocide: German settler land seizures, cattle confiscation, essentially annihilating the economy, forced labor systems, racial ideology rooted in early eugenics, military orders of annihilation, Vernichtschuttung Befehl, not even gonna butcher it, sounds like it's a German name, desert explosions denying access to water, concentration camps, and medical experimentation. Estimated lives lost in Herero 65,000 to 80,000, up to 80% of the population. Nama 10,000 to 20,000, around 50% of the population. Survivors were enslaved, sterilized, or used in racial science experiments that later informed Nazi ideology. Why isn't this taught? It disrupts the myth of civilizing missions. Two, it exposes genocide before the Holocaust. Three, it implicates Western modernity in racial science. Four, it challenges legal definitions of reparations. Five, it reveals continuity between colonialism and Nazism. Six, it undermines moral authority narratives. Seven, it forces accountability for land and wealth theft. Eight, it reframes Africa as foundational, not peripheral. Nine, it exposes how modern economies were built. 10, it threatens geopolitical innocence. Teaching Namibia honestly will require rewriting how power, progress, and profit are explained. Namibia's uranium lights cities it will never see. Its genocide shaped ideologies Europe claims to regret. Its silence protects systems still in operation. Namibia is not underdeveloped, it is undercredited, over extracted, and strategically forgotten. Wow, Namibia. What a history here. And this is just scratching the surface. More on this later. Hope you guys have a blessed day. Peace.